Right then. Hold on. Tripod was coming apart here. All right. Thinking Thursday, right? All right. How about that northern last night? That was pretty cool. Got hooks into one, right? Wasn't the species I was targeting. Wasn't the size of fish that I was targeting. But got my string stretched. Yeah. Spent about an hour and a half, 2 hours out there. Not bad. The muskie is called the fish of 10,000 casts. Yeah. You cast and cast and cast and cast, and eventually you might get one. They're not voraciously feeding all the time. They have a tendency to eat bigger meals, and then that sustains them for a while. So, unlike bass, panfish, even northern pike, who will seize any opportunity to get a meal, they'll be gluttons and they'll overeat. Muskies don't seem to be that way. They have feeding windows. Certain parameters have to all line up just right. You know, the phase of the moon and the barometric pressure and things like that. It all has to line up. And then a muskie is like a person. You know, 6 o'clock starts to roll around, your stomach starts to grumble. You're like, dang, I'm hungry. You look at the clock. It's 6 o'clock. It's time for supper. Let's eat. And you spend 20 minutes on an eating binge. And then in my case, you sit here in the therapy chair and you rest. And somebody can walk past you with a big old bowl full of steaming macaroni and cheese, and you'll be like, meh, get it away from me, I'm done. That's a good analogy with muskies. They have specific feeding windows, and that's when they eat. And then when they eat, they're done. So you could literally, because I've had this happen before, see a muskie resting in the shallows, and you can cast to it, and you can literally bring the bait right over its nose, and it will not move. It'll just back up a little bit, sit there and just sitting there finning, and it'll just back itself. It'll back away from the bait. It will not attack. So they are not this voracious water wolf that everybody thinks they are, and they're just ruthless like a northern pike. You do that on a northern pike, and there's a good chance that the northern will just, you know, they're the true water wolf. But muskies are very selective. Even right down to the size of the food they want. Early in the spring, before the season's even open, a lot of walleye fishermen and bass fishermen catch muskies by accident on little tiny lures that they're throwing for bass. My biggest fish of my life happened that very way. I was on a lake right after ice out. Hell, the cabbage weeds weren't even coming out of the bottom yet. They just looked like a clump of lettuce sitting on I was on a real clear lake, sitting on the bottom. They hadn't even unfolded and started to grow up into long stalks of cabbage weeds. The lake I was fishing on this day was all sand, and I was targeting areas where there was weed beds, but I was so early that the weeds hadn't even come up yet. They looked like little clumps of lettuce on the bottom in the sand. And I caught the biggest muskie of my life, every bit of a 50-inch fish, if not a 51. It was a monster. It was an alligator. By accident. Because I was throwing a little bass paddle tail rubber plastic bait for bass. And boom, it stopped. And I'm like, I'm snagged on a log. And then the log started to move. Yeah, started moving. I'm like, oh boy. I'm not going to tell the whole story, but I saw the fish. The fish was on this boat, was right below my feet, and I'm not even going to tell the rest of the story. And I know it was huge. It was like that wide across the back, that wide across the eyes. I'm staring at it. My wife saw it, my ex-wife. She looked down at it. She's like, oh my God, it's an alligator. I never got to hold them, and that's a whole different story. But anyway, in the spring, they just want little snacks. Yeah. But in the fall, they sense that winter's coming, so they want to fatten up their fat reserves because their metabolism slows down so much during the winter that they basically just sit on the bottom. Their belly's on the bottom and they're sleeping. They're hibernating. You don't see too many accounts of people catching muskies through the ice. There's a few where they'll catch them accidentally on a tip-up. But more often than not, muskies vanish in the winter and you don't see them. You don't catch them. They're hibernating. Well, they know winter's coming. So they put on the feed bag in this month of October and November to try to fatten up for winter so they don't have to eat, because their metabolism is so slow during the winter due to the cold water that they don't have the energy to chase down a bait to eat it. So unless you hang a shiner minnow or something right in front of their face, if you've ever watched, even northern pike are like this, if you ever watch video through the ice with an underwater camera, Clayton Schick is one of the fishermen I love to watch, and he does a lot of underwater footage with his AquaView camera positioned staring at one of his minnow baits on a tip-up. And you watch these northerns come in and they just, like here's the screen, what you're looking at now, and his minnow is sitting here, and it's just hanging there. Because the minnow too is lethargic now in the cold water. And you're just staring at this, and all of a sudden you see this northern come in like my hand. This slow. And he looks at it, and he looks at it, and he sits there. He's got it, he sits there. And then he just slowly swims away. Nothing like how an Esox species in the summertime in warm water feeds. Your minnow's sitting here. It's gone. So the energy level is not there. But muskies know that winter's coming. So they intentionally eat big baits to build up their fat reserves for the wintertime. So, but they have feeding windows. It's only for 30 minutes. So the reason they call it the fish of 10,000 casts is because you're cast 1, cast 2, cast 3, cast 4, and then that feeding window hits. There he is. Shining example of this on my favorite muskie lake up by camp. I went out in November toward the end of the season. It was snowing, it was cold, it was brutal, and I saw 15 fish on that day. Right about 10 in the morning, I had a flurry of activity where the fish were following my baits back to the boat. I only got hooks into one, and it was a smaller fish, but there were some monsters that were following the bait back to the boat. I saw them follow to the boat. My biggest fish that I actually got hooks into and I landed and I held them up for a picture was 45.5 inches. On that day, that was in the summer, it was in July, I had jet skis running around and stuff like this, water skiers on this lake. I caught 3 muskies in the span of about an hour and a half. The biggest one was 45.5 inches. But the key word, span of an hour and a half, that was the feeding window. 3 fish hit my bait. And then it was done. I fished right up until the magic hour at sunset at night, which when I thought, oh, it's going to get good. Nope, that feeding window was about 1:30 in the afternoon with all boat traffic on the lake. So that's how they work. That's how God created muskies. So spending time on the water for a fish of 10,000 casts, eventually you're going to get it right, where you're going to get a short little feeding window and you're going to get into a fish if your lure is in the area where that fish is currently residing. So it's straight up a crapshoot. Yeah. So on this lake, there's no structure. There's no mid-lake humps with weeds on them. There's no rock bars. There's no peninsulas that are sticking out into the water that have weed beds and rock. There's none of that classic, musky kind of structure on this water. It's basically a great big bowl that's surrounded by weeds in a deep basin. Well, bigger fish, bigger predatory fish, like I said, are looking to fatten up for the winter. On this type of water, they're just going to be cruising around the edge of that bowl looking for an opportunity for a big meal, right? The Esox species, northerns and muskies, prefer to eat cylindrical baits. Baits that are long and skinny. They're not tall and broad like a bluegill. I mean, they'll take a bluegill, but it's a lot harder for them to swallow a bluegill than it is to swallow a perch or a walleye or a baby northern, something, or a sucker minnow, something that's longer but not tall across the back. Because the way, if you looked at that northern, well, you probably couldn't see it because the camera was far away, but the way an Esox takes a bait is it takes it broadside. So when it comes in for the initial attack, it'll take that fish sideways like that, all right, and it swims off, and that's how the muskie or the northern kills the fish, right? It swims off. It's holding the fish like this, clamped down in that vice grip of its mouth, right? It swims off a short distance, and it spits the fish out, all right? And it repositions itself so that it can take that fish head on and eat it again and swallow it straight on. There's lots of underwater footage that proves this. That's how they eat fish. So that northern, he T-boned the bait. Muskies, they'll T-bone the bait. Very rarely will they take a bait from behind unless it's small. Now, I don't use these great big jumbo 1 pound musky lures. I don't even own one. I have a tendency to use smaller lures because I want more action. I'm not necessarily going for that 55-inch muskie, although I'd love to get one, but I'm not specifically targeting that, trophy fish. I want action, right? So I'm using smaller baits. Well, in several instances, with a bait that's only that long, I've had the muskie take it from behind and actually swallow it. That bait is so small and cylindrical shaped, it doesn't feel it has to T-bone it sideways and then reposition it so it can eat it head first. So, I'm diving into a rabbit hole. But anyway, yeah. So what I essentially have right out here, 75 feet away from my windows, is a virgin situation. I know there's a 30-inch class muskie in here. I know there's a 40-inch class northern in here. I've seen the pictures. And they have not been pressured at all because none of the people that live on this lake, like I said, are out there with heavy-duty gear and big baits targeting those fish. They're being caught by accident while these people are fishing for bass or they're fishing for bluegills. It's whoa, we got something on here. What is this? What is this? So if I'm the only guy in this water that's targeting these bigger fish with bigger baits, I feel that my likelihood of hookup is going to be far greater because the fish in these waters literally have not seen musky baits before. I could have a utopia on my hands. But that wasn't bad for an hour of fishing. Tie into a decent northern. No muskies. I might have seen one. I think I might have had a follow right out off the dock here. But there again, that water was the color of this coffee. Literally, that's what it looked like. So I could not see the lure until it got right next to the boat, which means if there was a fish behind it, swimming behind it and following it, I wouldn't see him at all unless he had his nose right up on the tail. And at one point, I thought I saw that. Yeah, but I'm not certain. Good time. Yeah, I miss that. Yeah, I used to muskie fish hardcore. I don't have any big fat muskies on my wall to prove it. My moment hasn't come yet, but I used to do it hardcore, and I miss the constant adrenaline rush mixed in with nap time. I mean, like I said, fish at 10,000 casts, you're going through the motions, and you're falling asleep at the wheel, and you're bringing your bait in, and all of a sudden there's a log behind it, and it doesn't register right away that there's a log behind it. So you go through your motions. I've actually had muskies follow up to the boat. I've been so out of tune due to the rhythm of cast, retrieve, and not seeing anything. And then on the 45th cast, a muskie follows it up to the boat that I've done my L turn at the edge of the boat, picked my lure out of the water and went to make another cast and looked down and saw the frickin' thing sitting there like, where'd you take my dinner? And went, son of a bitch, and put the bait back in and spooked the, oh yeah. That's happened more times than I care to talk about. Oh, it's real easy. Muskie fishing will put you to sleep. Yep. And then 15 minutes of chaos ensues. Oh, that sort of potential and adrenaline rush, yeah, that's like a drug. Mm-hmm. Especially when they crush it at the boat. Oh my God! Right at the boat, right at your feet. You see this big white mouth open up and whoop, and then all hell breaks loose right there. Oh, that's crazy. You can't beat it. But I haven't musky fished in years because I've been too focused on the progression of my life. Living at the trailer, remodeling the trailer, playing around with demonic women. You know what I mean? And I haven't musky fishing. There was so much dust on my musky rods on the frickin' hanging from the ceiling there that it's gonna take a pretty stiff paintbrush to clean them up. Yeah, and you can tell based on the sound of that reel when I was casting that howl. Yeah, I gotta open that thing up and get some oil in there. Yeah, jeez. But I got musky fishing right outside my door. I got better musky fishing just down the road a mile on the flowage. So time to get back into it. I got all the baits, all the lures. I got a suitcase full of musky lures. Yep. I have no need to buy a new musky lure. I've got everything I need. And I always reach and clip on the same 3 baits. Yep. Yep. 50 musky lures in a suitcase. Some of them have never seen the water. Oh my God. It's an addiction. Yep. Ridiculous. Anyway, enough of that. We'll keep doing it. Yep, we'll keep doing it. I got a feeling that trolling pattern's going to work too. With that big cranebait crappie imitator. I'm going to do some more of that. Because I'm just going to zigzag back and forth across the middle of this lake and hope that one of those bigger predatory fish is hanging around a school of crappies just waiting for a feeding window. The little switch clicks in its brain and it's like, oh, time to eat something. And it just darts into that school and grabs a crappie and then swims away. And now it's good for another day or two of food, you know. And I'm going to drag my crappie imitating crankbait just back and forth across the lake and see if I can tie into one. Yep, that'll be cool. All right, what else? It's Thinkin Thursday. Opened up my route. I got 2 calls. One of them is a diagnostic, and one of them is putting on parts that I ordered for a washing machine. Both of them are up by camp, up in the pickers, up by camp. You know what I'm going to do? Because I didn't have my measuring stick yesterday in the boat. I'm going to stop at camp and get my measuring stick, my musky measuring stick. That's sitting out in my shed. Mm-hmm. Yep. Might take my lunch break, actually punch out for 30 minutes and try to dive into that electrical issue too. Go down to the lower meter base down at the bottom of the hill and open up that box and see if there's a loose wire connection or something on that. Might do that as well. Kate and Rob. Yep. Well, first we'll talk about Scrunch. Scrunch is sick. She didn't come up yesterday, obviously, or she'd have been in the boat with me. How come is it every time I catch a decent fish, you know, that big northern I got a couple months back, now this guy here that I got into, she's not here. That sucks. Because she gets such a thrill out of stuff like that. Genuine enthusiasm. If Mia would have been in the boat with me both times, oh, that's a nice fish. Yeah. No excitement. No excitement. Scrunch would have been fascinated with that. She would have been doing her little happy dance, and I would have had her hold the fish up even though she didn't catch it. I'd have her hold it so I could take a picture. And, oh, she'd have been over the moon. Genuine enthusiasm is important to me. Mia's just kind of like a flatliner, like, yeah, that's a nice fish. Yeah. Be gone from me. Anyway. So Scrunch is sick. She took a COVID test. Came up negative. So I don't know. She might have the flu. She might have something, but she got something. After all, she did go into a pharmacy to pick up a subscription or prescription. So that's a recipe for disaster because you're literally walking into a petri dish. And if you're not disciplined in wearing a mask and you're not sanitizing your hands after you leave the building before you put something in your mouth, you eat with your hands, you're bound to get sick because everybody that goes into a pharmacy for the most part is sick and is there to pick up something. You know what I mean? It's a petri dish. Same thing with a walk-in clinic or a hospital. You're literally walking into a storm. So she's sick. And she was just at the pharmacy to pick up a prescription. So there's proof in the pudding. So she wasn't up here yesterday. Depending on how long it drags out, she might not be up here this weekend. Rob will be. Yep. He's planning on coming up Saturday morning. He's only staying for the day. I invited him for the weekend, all the way through Sunday, midday. That's when he rolls out, get back on the road. And I did it so he can get away from the toxic environment that currently is his house. You know, that's toxic. There's negative energy in that building because of Kate and the daughter. You know, he can feel it. He can sense it. He's a white lighter. Even though he's not living like a white lighter, he's a backslider. He said, I can feel it. I walk into that house and it just feels dark. And I'm like, Holy Spirit's talking to you right there. So I invited him up here for the weekend. Work on the Jeep, work on the shop, go out on the lake, do a little fishing, etc. Time away in a positive environment. He doesn't want to stay overnight Saturday night because I told him, I thought Scrunch was going to be here. I said, yeah, we're going to church Sunday morning and you'll be here so you can go along. Turns out he doesn't want to go to church. I'm not ready for that. What? Okay. Huh? I've had a lot of bad experiences with churches. I go to churches and they're not real, or they're just looking for your money, or blah, blah, blah. I'm like, oh, dude. So he's got a sour taste in his mouth regarding a brick and mortar church. And I'm the same way. I haven't been to church in years. The only reason I started going to church here is because my dad pressured me into doing it. I get more information. As a matter of fact, I'll prove it to you. I get more information out of my YouTube churches than I do. Here's what I'm currently watching. Shut up, cat. Oh, this cat's annoying. I get more information from my YouTube preachers than I do my brick and mortar church. Yep. Well, you've heard me say that before. So Rob was afraid I was going to force him to go to church. So he said, no, I'm going to cut out Saturday night and I'm going to go somewhere. I don't know where. I'm like, why? Yeah, I don't want to go to church. I'm not going to make him go to church. No. As a matter of fact, I probably, if he's here, I probably won't go to church myself. Right. Now, God wants me to go to church. But if Rob is here and Rob is struggling with his situation, and Rob and I get talking about Christian stuff and things like that through the course of conversation, which happens, I find myself telling him, well, what would Jesus do? Or you're not acting very Christian-like, or, you know, whatever. I try to insert white lighterism into the situation. Even if we don't go to the brick and mortar church up the road, I still have an opportunity to witness to him and offer wisdom if I have any in my meager knowledge of this subject. I'm a fledgling too, you know. I was a backslider. I'm just trying to get back into it. Get on the right path before the end of the world comes at the end of November. I'll have an opportunity out in the boat or out in the shop or sitting here in the therapy chairs to inject God into the conversation to try to keep him on the path of the straight and narrow. So in essence, it'll be church in a roundabout way. So I don't necessarily have to go to the building and drag him with me. That's what he's afraid of. So I'm going to let him know today, dude, if you don't want to go, I'm okay with it. We'll stay home. Yeah, we'll stay here. And I'm sure God won't mind. He's not up there.